Today we're going to talk about kind of the way that we're maturing our service overall. It kind of started out as like we're building single use case agents, stuff like customer success agent or customer support agent or voice receptionist. We're getting all the meeting transcripts from sales calls and we are putting them in a vector database and doing RAG on it, creating reports, whatever it is. Kind of like single use case agents that like make a lot of sense, and you can kind of point to a specific role in a company and say like, yeah, that agent is supporting that role. But obviously, like as we've been working on these systems and some of my past videos kind of point towards this, I think that there's a top to bottom transformation that a lot of companies are going to, one, I think it's inevitable that they're going to do it, and two, they're interested in doing it, right? Like these are conversations that we're having with prospects and clients about, okay, yeah, it's cool, like we can have immediate help, right? We can solve the pain point like right away. We're having more and more conversations where it's like, okay, yeah, like how do we just build a system where it's top to bottom, AI agent first, and we have that foundation built, and then we can go and hire more people or scale that system overall or whatever it is. This is the direction we're going. AI implementation across the entire organization rather than single use case for a single role, conquering a single kind of like workflow. The reason for this, by the way, is because you can kind of get this stuff off the shelf now. There's tons of like agent builders, but very easy platforms to kind of sign up for and solve that problem, right? Like you can go and solve the AI SDR problem. One, because it's easy to build, but then two, like realistically, it's just about integrating in prompts, right? Like integrating your email and CRM and maybe calendar, and then what's the actual prompt behind it? Like little micro SaaS products that people are basically, it's like an agent and they're building a whole product around it. Like those are popping up everywhere now, and we're aware of it, which is why like we're, there's kind of seeing the forest from the trees. There's a deeper approach here that I think a lot of businesses, entrepreneurs, executives are interested in exploring, and kind of those single use case agents, like while they might get the job done, it's more of like, do we really want to just bolt on a bunch of things to the business and a couple of years down the road untangle it all because we didn't build it from the bottom up first, right? We didn't set the foundation of like the data is coming in properly, we're adding proper context to that data. If we want to change something, it's just a matter of changing the prompt rather than changing the entire way that it's kind of configured. We're having these conversations, and because of that, we're now maturing our service. And part of that process is upfront providing consulting, strategy development, and being very clear about like, what are your workflows? How much time are you spending on these workflows? How much money is that? What are kind of like the bottlenecks that are causing you not to scale overall? What initiatives in the future do you want? We've been talking to one client who they want to franchise their business. And it's really hard when all of your systems are kind of ad hoc and the knowledge is stuck in people's heads. There's a lot of dependencies there, and the data isn't streamlined in a way where you can kind of easily triage things out. And so we have to take a bottom-up approach there. We can't just like bolt on an agent and expect it to work. What we're doing now as part of our sales process, but then also just kind of like our agency in general, is providing AI implementation strategy, docs, and wireframes up front. You have an intro call with us. We learn a bit about your business. We learn about kind of like your approach, challenges, your goals. We qualify you, you qualify us. It's like, hey, this would be a good partnership. We should definitely work together over the long term. Okay, cool. Next is like a second call, which is an hour, depending on how much we're talking about and how much we're talking. But it's about an hour, and we really dig into the details on, okay, what exactly is this workflow? How many people are involved here? What systems do we have to integrate with? What are we expecting like the AI agent to do? And where do we see this going? Like what future things can we build? Maybe we start with one department, one single use case, and expand across the rest of the business. Because sometimes there's a butterfly effect. You do one thing at the beginning during the sales process, and it affects everything all the way down the line. And honestly, it should, right? It should. Anyway, we've been doing these AI implementation strategy documents. I have a template here based on a real document that we actually created. And let me just kind of walk through it. So I'll set the scene. This client came in. First of all, there's a big mess, right? The leads come in. It takes a while to kind of figure out which account executive needs to talk to the lead. There's no real firm process around triaging effectively. Leads end up talking to the wrong people sometimes. And so the first kind of problem to solve is like, okay, we need to just make sure that the leads who come in, they're getting assigned to the right account executive so that account executive can take action. Now the next step is, okay, instead of the account executive sending an email right away, trying to schedule a call, or calling right away, we'll have an agent do that. Instant calling, instant trying to schedule the meeting, so that way the account executive just sees the meeting, show up on the calendar, and it's ready to go. So this is the problem we're trying to solve. So the overview is we're going to develop an AI-driven solution for the client to improve lead engagement, customer onboarding, production, and order management. So the customer onboarding, production, order management, that will come later as part of the roadmap. But first, we're going to tackle lead engagement, right? And then we're going to work all the way down the client journey. Custom AI Studio will build, maintain, and implement multiple AI agents to optimize these processes, starting with lead engagement. This AI implementation strategy will cover our proposed solution for lead engagement. And so for each new kind of like phase of this, we'll have a new kind of document for it. But for now, lead engagement. And then we break down the actual agents and what they're going to do. So inbound lead routing agent, right? How do we clean that system up? Well, we're going to route the inbound leads to the appropriate account executive, obviously. In the actions, it's going to analyze the lead data, so analyze the form, and then determine like which AE should be assigned, which account executive, and then go ahead and update the record in the CRM. And then the integrations are HubSpot for kind of the lead tracking, right? Obviously. And then the sales assistant agent is kind of the key agent here. You know, it's almost the case where this could be just a regular automation, but there's a reason why we made it an agent, and I'll get into that in a second. But sales assistant agent. So this one is maintain consistent engagement with new leads with the goal of scheduling sales meetings with the appropriate AE. Okay, it's going to send an incident engagement email to the new lead with the purpose of scheduling a meeting. It'll send follow-ups. Let's say that they sent the instant engagement, lead didn't answer, we need to follow up. It's going to reply to emails with relevant responses to schedule the meetings when appropriate, right? Like, hey, yeah, do you have time to meet on Monday? No, I don't really have time to meet on Monday. What's your availability like on Tuesday? It needs to be able to respond to that kind of thing. Send follow-up emails to leads attempting to reschedule if a meeting is canceled or the email conversation asks the agent to do so. So like, let's say that, the lead canceled the meeting. We want to follow up right away. Hey, why'd you cancel? Do you need to reschedule something going on? Whatever. A lot of times that's what happens. That's why people cancel. The second scenario is like, okay, what if the AE or the lead is like, hey, I know we had this meeting scheduled on Tuesday, but can we reschedule to like Wednesday? Well, we want the agent to be able to go, hey, yeah, let me check the calendar, checks the calendar for availability, and then comes back to the lead saying, hey, yeah, I found a couple times, do these work for you? And then obviously integrations here are going to be like HubSpot, Gmail, Google Calendar, assuming that this is their tech stack, which it isn't, but I'm putting that there for now. And then we put together the development plan. Now, this is the tough part because there's a lot of unknowns, and we built a calling receptionist that like schedules the call. This was an accounting firm. Someone calls in, they schedule a meeting with the accountant. If it's a client and they would like actually need to talk to a person, or if it's anybody and they want to talk to one of the guys who works there, it transfers the call to them. And then later it's going to cross-check against CRM, and then it's going to do a bunch of things. But I'm telling you this because we thought that would take max maybe 30 to 40 hours. It ended up taking like 80, 85, 90 hours. And the bulk of the hours, I would say 30% of the time, was on the prompt. And it makes sense, right? Because the prompt is kind of like the new way of programming, where that 30% of the time would have been like actually writing code, but now it's writing prompts and testing prompts and rewriting and testing again. So, you never really know how long the prompt engineering piece of it is gonna take. But yeah, so I basically say this to say the timelines on these is really, really difficult to get right. And the more that we build, the more tools we have, the more organizational knowledge we have, and the faster we can go. So now we're actually starting to pick up speed on some of these builds because we have a lot of stuff that we can kind of pull off the shelf. And we have like standard processes around how we actually build these agents. And you'll see in the wireframe, like kind of the framework that we go at it from. Proposed development plan, we break it down in like phases. So first thing we're going to do is attack the lead routing. And then here we just have points on like, we try to get as granular as possible about exactly what is happening. So for example, set up HubSpot property for contact status. We need a way for it to tell, or at least identify, like this is a lead, this is somebody who needs to get follow-up emails. There's a certain kind of cadence or a way to engage with this person because they are marked as lead as opposed to like customer or engaged lead. Most CRMs have this, right? But it's usually better if we can kind of just create our own properties for the agents to work off of rather than using pre-existing properties, simply because like most people don't actually keep their CRM very clean, and that's okay. But if it is very clean and you want to work off your properties, that's obviously better. But a lot of cases we kind of have to set up the kind of data on your platform first in order for the agents to like work effectively, right? And we're estimating like 5 to 10 hours. It could be less, could be a little bit more, but it's usually not going to be more. We try to be conservative about the estimates. Sales assistant agent. So this is like, okay, once we crack this, we know that the right account executives are being assigned to the right leads. Like we know that's good, 100%, awesome. Now we need to actually like do something, right? So next thing we're going to do is set up the HubSpot trigger when a lead is assigned as an AE. So like immediately, right when the inbound lead routing agent marks it as a lead and has assigned it to the AE, so those two kind of like checkpoints, criteria points, this agent will be triggered and it'll send an automatic email. Hey, you have time to meet on Monday, whatever it is. Part of this is we need to develop the prompt and we need to develop some of the tooling for it to actually like send an email or schedule a calendar event. And then we're going to build out more capability for the agent. So this is kind of going to be the longer term process. I feel like, if we solve these two issues and we're pretty quick about it, we're solving, at least like 60% of the problem that they have, which is lead routing and just engaging with leads faster. But how do we make this more robust? How do we make it actually useful? So we're going to set up triggers like twice a day. Anybody who hasn't responded in the last 48 hours is going to get a follow-up email. Responded, I mean like responded to like the initial email to try to set up the call. We need to develop a prompt for that. We need to use the email agent tool. We need to develop more to the prompt for kind of like coordinating back and forth, scheduling, right? Calendar tool, calendar actions, re-engagement email. So like this is for the scenario of like someone canceled. How do we re-engage, try to get it on the calendar? And then we have some success metrics here, right? And these are going to get better over time. So this document is kind of our, we've done it a few times now and it works great and it's kind of a great foundation, but I want to make this better. And a big piece of making it better is tying it to actual numbers. So like, how are we going to track lead conversion rate? Well, we need to know that at the beginning. And then CRM data management, like, are the leads organized in the CRM like very effectively? Part of that is kind of like you ask the team at the end of it. But lead conversion, we should be able to literally track the numbers on that to see the improvement. So this is what we provide after the strategy sessions, right? After that second call, this is what we're doing. We're working on this right here. And then we're also working on this. And right now I'm the one who's primarily doing this because you kind of need like business workflow experience and knowledge, and then also some development knowledge as well to just know exactly like what's possible and when to do what. But anyway, so as you can see, like we have the breakdown here that kind of goes through the capability set, the triggers, stuff like that. And then we also have kind of this little ledger notes section over here, notes, key integrations, the ledger on like what exactly are you looking at when you're looking at these diagrams. And then we have this broken out into different phases, phase 1, 2, 3. So I'll go over this really quick. So inbound lead routing agent, very similar content to what's on the document. Analyzes lead intake form, identify which account executive should be assigned based on the predefined criteria, and update the HubSpot record by adding the assigned AE. The trigger is going to be like a new lead is added to HubSpot via specific sources. So, whenever someone comes from a specific form, we'll know that, right? And then we'll be able to kind of auto mark them as lead in HubSpot, and then that will trigger the inbound routing agent. And then I like to add like future capabilities, like how can we improve this system? Because realistically, like if you're an automation guy, you know that you can probably set up just a regular automation here, and it doesn't need to be anything crazy. Why would we build it in the form of an agent rather than an automation? Well, it's because we might be able to add future capabilities to it, right? So new lead comes in, maybe we conduct research. Maybe the type of leads are different and we want to conduct research in different ways based on the type of lead it is, right? So we're asking the agent to do a little bit more there. Maybe there's another capability that we could add, but this is kind of the main one where, how do we just get it to do more? And then we have the sales assistant agent. So the capabilities here are pretty much the same, right? Send instant, like same as on the document, send instant engagement email, naturally coordinate scheduling by providing the AE's available time, asking the leads what time makes sense for them. So instead of sending kind of like a Calendly link or a scheduling link, we want it to be a natural coordination conversation. Send follow-ups to unresponsive leads, create calendar events, update calendar events. There's probably a little bit more that I could add here, but this gets the idea across of like what is the capability of this agent. And then the triggers here are going to be varied. So a new lead is assigned to an AE in HubSpot that should trigger it to send that instant email. Get HubSpot context. So this is like scheduled, right? So like twice per day, we're going to check the last contacted property in HubSpot and see when was the last time that they were reached out to. and did they respond essentially? And like if it's more than 48 hours, then we're going to send a follow-up, right? Hey, did you see my email? So like if a new email comes in, it's tied to someone who's marked as lead in HubSpot. We want it to figure out if it needs to respond or not, right? Like, yeah, I am available on Wednesday. Can you book us a time, right? It needs to like be able to respond to that. So new email. And then if an event gets canceled, right? This one might be a little bit tricky because sometimes what happens is like the account executive might have a conversation with the lead kind of outside of the agent's like purview, and they decided to cancel the meeting. And so it got canceled, but then the agent is responding to the lead saying like, hey, I saw this got canceled. Should we reschedule at a different time? We don't want that to be the case. So this one might be a little bit tricky to kind of figure out the context there, which this is kind of like a microcosm of a larger thing about the agent database, right? The master contextual database that I've been talking about. Like if we have that set up properly, then it doesn't matter. Then the context is there on like why it got canceled. Now, and it's not just about the database, but it's about the data capture, right? We need to capture all of that data. When the account executive is talking to a lead, that should be in the agent database. That should be known, right? It shouldn't be outside of the data that we're able to capture. But that's a bigger conversation that we'll get into in a sec, down the road. Future capabilities. So this one, we could add many, many things to this, right? Like post-meeting follow-ups, contract and proposal generation, re-engaging old leads, dedicated assistant per each account executive. So each account executive might have their own sales assistant that's doing things for them, right? Almost like an executive assistant, but retrieves and sends marketing material or other documents, right? So like, how do we grab something out of OneDrive or Google Drive? Best practice, in my opinion, is to set up one folder for the agent to access and put all of your marketing material and stuff in there for it to go grab that stuff and use it, send it as an attachment to, whoever you're sending that stuff to. Continually updating HubSpot records and pipeline stages based on conversation history and meetings. So have a conversation. The lead says like, hey, give me until like next month for us to like figure out budget approvals and whatever, right? Like give me until next month, let's push it off. Let's add a note into the HubSpot record for it, and then let's change the stage from like, active to in progress, whatever your stages are, right? So here you can see that we're essentially breaking down like what we're gonna do initially, and then outlining where we can go with this if you really wanted to keep going, right? Which part of that qualifying process in the intro is trying to partner with clients who are in it for the long haul, who want to grow with us and are really interested in implementing AI from like a bottom-up approach. Like those are the people that we want to work with, for obvious reasons, right? And then over here, we obviously have this kind of like little section here to kind of give context to what you're seeing. So in the notes, it's saying, for this one, if it's scheduling for this specific AE, it needs to have access to that account executive's calendar. It means the agent will need to access everyone's calendar and schedule events, update events, cancel events, and retrieve available times for those specific calendars. Now, I solved this issue with an agent that we're building now that's called like Mallory, and I'll show you guys that in a future video. But this was a note at the time that I made because wasn't sure exactly how to solve it. Anyway, the agent will need a dedicated email address to send emails from. This works better than using the user's email address. The agent will be the owner of the event and add the AE. The AE will be able to change and update the event if needed. So if the agent is making the events, the agent becomes the owner and they can add the AE to it. But it also works better when we, in this scenario, have it be a separate entity with its own like email account, for obvious reasons, because we kind of want it to function as an assistant rather than kind of working on the account executive's behalf, especially if like anything goes wrong, right? Like it says something weird or whatever, right? You just want it to kind of be separated and have it known like this is an AI assistant. It's going to help us quite a bit, but again, it's an AI assistant, right? And we all know where AI is right now. Then we have some key integrations, and then we have this ledger here, which breaks down how we conceptualize our framework around like the agents. So we kind of call the main agents super agents because we can add many capabilities to it, and the idea is that we add those capabilities by changing the prompt, right? If we just give the agent a series of tools, then the only difference between what one agent can do versus another is really the prompt, right? And again, I'm going to get into this later, but I had a mini breakthrough this weekend about how do we kind of standardize the process of building multi-agent structures and teams, and this is kind of pointing in that direction. And so like the way that we break it down is really kind of the super agent as a whole. Then we have this breakdown here, which is kind of the input data or the trigger. We have the action, which ultimately is going to be the prompt. And then we have kind of the execution, the tool agent, right? Like, how is it actually doing the thing? How is it actually sending the email? Well, we need an email agent, right? Or at least an API. So let's look at the phases. So we like to break these down into phases simply because if we get one thing wrong at the beginning, then the rest of it is not going to work. So like you kind of have to crack it one step at a time, essentially. So phase one is, how do we get the routing? So we build this routing agent. The trigger is new contact added to the CRM and marked as a lead. And then, this is what it's told to do, right? Analyze the lead data and assign the correct account executive to it. And we just need the HubSpot agent for that. So that's phase one. Shouldn't take too much time. It depends on the criteria set, depends on how many variables there are. And most of the time spent on this is going to be on the prompting, just making sure it's triaging effectively. Phase two is when we start building out the sales assistant agent. So we're building on top of the previous phase. So the sales assistant agent, if you remember, the first thing we're going to do is like, okay, now that the inbound routing agent has, triaged effectively, assigned an AE to the HubSpot record, what needs to happen? Well, this agent will get triggered and it's told to just send an instant email with the purpose of like scheduling the calendar event. So it's just sending the email. So if somebody responded, it wouldn't be able to kind of book it at that time. And that's okay, because we just want to make sure that, first of all, that first email that's sent is like generated correctly and it works effectively, essentially, right? So like once we do this, it should be a pretty quick transition to phase three, right? And we need the calendar agent and the email agent for this sales assistant. Phase three. So this is where the rest of the kind of ability or capability set gets built out for this agent, right? So we have the first one, and then we have these other three, I guess you could say. So, okay, now we have the first email being sent out. Cool. Now what if they don't respond? Well, how do we solve that? We need a trigger to go off twice a day to pull all of the leads that are, one, marked as lead, and then two, have the last contacted date, which is like a property in HubSpot. It's more than 48 hours ago. So, okay, cool. 10 leads match that criteria. What are we doing? We're sending a follow-up email, trying to schedule on the AE's calendar. It's just follow-ups, right? We're sending follow-ups. What else is it going to do? Well, if the email's received, and we're going to trigger this via HubSpot, I think, for certain reasons, mainly because it's already going to filter by people who are in the CRM, and then it's easier to kind of say like, okay, email came in, can we check if they're a lead just right away? What's it going to do? So it's going to reply with a relevant response. So this is going to be a heavy prompt. Like, we want to make it as simple as possible and straightforward as possible to prompt, but realistically, the way that you reply to an email or how you handle certain inbound emails, it needs to be kind of spelled out. And then we're also going to have it schedule or update the calendar event. So this is really giving it the ability to coordinate back and forth with somebody and schedule it, right? And there's some tricks to the trade here in terms of like, the agent might send one email saying, hey, do you have some time to meet on Tuesday? And then someone responds a day later saying, no, I have time. I don't, but I have time on Wednesday. And the agent needs the context of the conversation to be able to like continue the conversation and to understand like where it's at and what it needs to do, right? We can't just say, hey, you're a coordinating agent, like, handle like meeting coordination. I mean, maybe you can, but like, it's not going to be super reliable. And then the calendar event is canceled, right? So what do we do when calendar events are canceled? So we're really breaking this down and trying to be as precise as possible about what exactly is happening here, because it's not a human. We can't just say, do this or that and, whatever. We have to give it the right tools and give it the right instructions and test those instructions so that way it does what we're expecting it to do, right? So this is kind of how we wireframe it up. And it's supposed to give you a visual on what's happening, but then also give you the opportunity to give us feedback on, hey, you guys are way off here. This is not exactly what I'm picturing or how I see this working. It doesn't align with my vision. And doing this up front really saves a lot of time on the back end because like I said, it helps us align. It sets a little bit of a roadmap on like where we're going. And, this is just kind of one project that we're doing. This client has onboarding stuff that they want to get taken care of, production stuff that they want to get taken care of, order management stuff that they want to get taken care of. Like there are overarching big systems and workflows that they have that they want to streamline, right? And we're simply just starting with the lead engagement piece, right? So, this should be kind of a microcosm, a micro example of like how we're going to handle the future stuff down the road, right? Like once we've solved this, now they know, okay, this is how these guys work, right? This is like the typical timeline, how long it takes. This is how do I gauge personally, right, with these people. And this is how they kind of like understand and conceptualize and build a framework around like attacking these problems. And so it helps like on the next project, the client understands that, and we can kind of like close the gap of misunderstanding between each other, if there is a gap to begin with, right? So yeah, anyway, just to recap, this is the direction we're going. It's more consultative, it's more bottom up, it's more partnership, it's AI transformation, it's less single use case, it's less one-time project, it's more relationship building, right, over time. So I think every business is going this direction. I think there's probably gonna be a lot of companies who pop up and compete with us on this, right? Like, it's my conviction that every single company is gonna be using AI. I think it's inevitable. Just like every single company has a website, every single company probably uses their phone, every person uses their phone. So AI adoption is an inevitability, especially in the business arena. And the biggest thing that it can do is help with your operations, your data flow internally, and communication externally and internally, right? Just gluing it all together, streamlining that process. It really should get to the point where information is instant. There is no like gathering of information or doing the actual research. It's humans like reading the information and engaging and building relationships, and that's it, like realistically, or planning strategy and coming up with SOPs, and you working with agents to help come up with those SOPs. But like realistically, like the moving of data one place to another, the pressing of buttons, and the, just updating the CRM and whatever, all the things that people don't generally like when it comes to their job, agents should be able to take care of that. And a big piece of that is the data side, which is why this is an AI transformation, not just implementation. It's a complete transformation at the end of the day. So anyway, just want to give you guys an idea on the direction we're going in terms of consulting and service and the agency side of things. And in the next videos, I'm going to show like actual agents and the super agent breakdown, and one of the agents that I've built that I'm going to add capabilities to over time. And one of the videos I'll also just like live build a super agent that I haven't built yet, but I've been meaning to build it because it's a huge pain point for me personally, and I imagine a pain point for a lot of you. So yeah, that's pretty much it.